Audio chapter for Fantastic Faith. 3 lessons from Marvel's First Family in First Steps. This was originally an article written for lovethynerd.com and will in the future be appearing in what I guess will be Faith and Fandom 11. I don't know. Well, that's a long time away. But either way, here we go. I remember sitting in middle school gym class and seeing a trailer for a Fantastic Four movie that would never be released. They rolled out the infamous cart with a TV and VCR. I don't remember what movie we watched, but I remember the preview for Fantastic Four and waiting to see that movie for years. I was familiar enough with the comic book history 30 plus years ago to have a vague concept of who these characters were, and I was intrigued. At this point, we basically just had big screen versions of Superman and Batman, so I was excited to see what this would be like. It never got the chance to show what it could be, although I hear you can watch it on YouTube. It would be 4 years later before Blade finally picked up the torch to bring Marvel to the big screen. Since then, we've been through 2 different iterations of the Four, plus a bonus John Krasinski. And now, it's the part of the show where Pedro Pascal defends a specially enabled child against great odds. While this is a familiar theme, there were plenty of things that seemed familiar yet fresh in Fantastic Four. Even though this was the 4th iteration we've seen of Marvel's First Family, it was still the first take for a whole new cinematic universe and the generations who will see it. It was visually charming and had an authentic feel to the world it created. After spending a couple hours in this world, here are 3 reflections I took away from my foray into the fantastic. Steal, kill, and destroy. Through some nice montages and highlight reels, we see that the Fantastic Four have built themselves a near utopia. Crime is down, society is benefiting, Earth 828 is seemingly the most polished and pristine world we've seen in Marvel. It's genuinely warm, fuzzy, and a smidge vanilla. That is until, of course, the Surfer shows up heralding Galactus' arrival and Earth's end. Just when things are at their smoothest, someone shows up who literally is bent on destroying their entire existence. Even when they try to talk to the Surfer or Galactus, reason isn't an option. I think one of the constant disappointments or frustrations in our lives are the moments when we finally get things in one piece for a moment, and then chaos happens. A car breaks down, an illness is found, a job is lost, or a celestial cosmic entity wants to show up and eat your planet. It's part of the story and the cycle of living. There's going to be trouble. Jesus spoke on 2 passages that always hit home for me with this. John 10:10 states, "The thief comes only to steal, kill, and destroy. I have come that they may have life and have it to the full." John 16:33 says, "I have told you these things so that in me you may have peace. In this world you will have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world." Can't be controlled by the approval of others. Jesus makes these points throughout the book of John that living in the world will come with trouble, and we will have to contend with a force that is actively trying to destroy any and everything good we've built. But the joy and hope that comes with that horribly heralded news is that Jesus wants us to have a full and abundant life, and that he wants us to have peace, regardless of what troubles the world brings at us. People pleasing. One of the wildest moments in the movie to me is when the Four return to Earth after unsuccessful negotiations with Galactus. They are hastily thrown into a press conference, and as they are being questioned about how things went down, Reed, with all the social skills of an actual Stretch Armstrong, announces to the whole world that Galactus would have left them alone if they had simply given up their own child. Fam, that was not information that needed to be shared. They could have avoided a lot of conflict and disdain if they had just omitted that part of the report or stated that Galactus couldn't be reasoned with. But nope, Reed awkwardly spilled all the tea, which left the whole world angry at the seemingly selfish nature of their choice. Considering we operate within a faith that hinges on a father sacrificing their child for the good of the world, it's easy to see how some people might look at their choice with a strong side eye. Sue eventually makes a plea to the people. I will not sacrifice my child for this world, but I will not sacrifice this world for my child. They weren't willing to make a choice simply because it made the rest of the world or Galactus happy. This was another thing I found encouraging, just because it's so easy for us to feel that crippling weight and anxiety to live up to people's expectations. As a chronic people pleaser myself, that's the kind of pressure that would leave me debilitated. But the four stood together as a family, setting an example for us, just as Paul did for the Galatian and Thessalonian churches. Galatians 1:10, am I now trying to win the approval of human beings or of God? Or am I trying to please people? If I were still trying to please people, I would not be a servant of Christ. 1 Thessalonians 2:3-4. For the appeal we make does not spring from error or impure motives, nor are we trying to trick you. On the contrary, we speak as those approved by God to be entrusted with the gospel. We are not trying to please people, but God who tests our hearts. There will come many opportunities and circumstances in our lives where we will be pressured to make choices just to please others or check the boxes in their limited options. If we're truly living for God, people-pleasing can't be our guide or standard. We need to be able to boldly stand for the choices that please God, even if they make us look as awkward as Reed at that press conference. Run to refuge. One of the things I appreciated most as the Fantastic Four was reaching its climax was the fact they actually took time to do preemptive damage control. One of the biggest tropes in super-powered battles is the colossal amount of damage, injury, and loss of life that happens every time a bad guy shows up for battle. Most stories like this don't have the Dragon Ball Z effect of taking the battles somewhere unpopulated, and most heroes don't have the time to save squirrels like Superman. When the four realized their plan for facing Galactus was going to bring destruction to the hearts of thousands, they took the time to evacuate everyone to Mole Man's underground realm of Subterranea. They didn't wait until Galactus was about to make stains out of bystanders or before rubble reduced residents to residue. They provided refuge before everything hit the cosmic fan. This is a solid reminder for me because God is proclaimed throughout Scripture to be a refuge. But as so often, we fail to seek refuge before the chaos. We end up being the one dude stubbornly trying to run under the Galactus's feet instead of safely with the mole folk. Psalm 91, 1-2 reads, Whoever dwells in the shelter of the Most High will rest in the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of the Lord, He is my refuge and my fortress, my God in whom I trust. Psalm 46, 1-3 reads, God is our refuge and strength, an ever-present help in trouble. Therefore we will not fear, though the earth give way, and the mountains fall into the heart of the sea, though its waters roar and foam, and the mountains quake with their surging. It was still alarming for the citizens to feel the shaking of their city from underground, but they remained safe. Yay, mole people architecture. For us, if we are willing to make the conscious choice to make God our refuge, we will find ourselves secure at even the most catastrophic calamities. This was a solid story about family, sacrifice, and what we do when we are faced with opposition greater than ourselves. We won't always be able to choose the struggles and challenges we are faced with, but we will have the option to choose how we respond to them. And that response can make even the worst circumstances fantastic. Once again, this is a rough draft essay from Love Thy Nerd and will potentially be featured in Book 11. And before I go, I want to take a moment to thank our Patreon supporters for all that you do and to remind you that you can read like a couple hundred free geeky devotionals at faithandfandom.org. Click the chapters button. You can go book by book or category by category. But our Patreon supporters are Jackie Kraft, Kelly Townsend, Alan Wallace, Fab Quack, Rivka and Tristan Birch, Dorothy Martin Winston, Michelle Stewart, Lynn Turner, David Brooks, Jeff Weimer, Colin Sproles, Jamie Montgomery, the Coleman family, Jonathan Herman, Ron Petit, Gear Saber Cosplay, Scott Ward, Alicia Glenn, Jay Sheed, Jason Crutchfield, Mike Perna, Todd Turner, Jonathan Jacobs, Zach Harris, Caleb Grimm, Jeanette Skaggs, Jason Bullock, Christina Ray, Sarah Lewis, Patrick Gale, Rebecca Godlove, and Adam Davis. Thank you all for taking the time to be supporters and encouragers. And I hope you all find encouragement in everything you experience. Have a great day.